So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our second NGG webinar. In our first session, we were delighted to host Dr. Sultan Al-Kalbani, who is an Omani doctor who had a unique experience with COVID-19 in the UK. He was infected himself, and then after he became well, he decided to stay in the UK and help UK hospitals fighting the pandemic. Today, we welcome Dr. Ammar AlOjaili, who is the SablaX team leader, which is the innovation arm and center within. Ammar is the first person to become the leader of SablaX, as it is a relatively new department within SablaX. However, this will be very interesting to hear more about the topics. Basically, he used the establishment of SablaX. Dr. Ammar, before he was in SablaX, he was also an associate director in the CATOF program, which is a full experience learning program that starts from the late stages in high school and continues until after university. Just there's a comment. I think Dr. Ammar, there's I think noise in the background.
Just a sec.
Sorry.
Any better now, guys?
Yes. Welcome, Dr. Ammar. Thank you for that. It's very nice to have you with us.
Apologies for the background noise.
Right. So, Dr. Ammar, let me start with this. Obviously, we're talking about corporate innovation and how corporate innovation departments or teams within companies in Oman are critical, especially at these stages that we're going through at the moment. So maybe if you tell us more about the inception of SablaX and how was it initiated, and basically what are the main objectives of the establishment of the team and the core components of building such a unit or such a team within corporates.
That's a loaded question, Al-Ghais. SablaX was incepted in April of 2019. The leadership team in OQ was visiting the Scandinavian countries for inspiration. They visited with a few companies and organizations in there, and they came across a concept, or actually an application in place of Volvo called CampX, hence the X. CampX is a place where Volvo would bring its staff along with academia, students from universities and colleges, its suppliers, customers, and come up basically with ideas of products to push through in the future. And some of these ideas are actually saw daylight in terms of products that Volvo pushed into the market later on, based on the analysis and based on the needs that were identified. So our leadership team came across this and immediately thought, why not Oman? Why not OQ? Why not have something similar to this in the company? And came back. They came back with multiple initiatives, 10 initiatives, if I recall correctly. One of them was SablaX, to start an innovation hub in the company that will enable us as a company and us as a country as well to grow into the future, to develop our processes, our products, our services, to push the envelope in terms of what we provide to the community, to the market as a company. That was the inspiration behind it, to drive business growth, basically. That was the second part of the question. You were asking about components, Al-Ghais, am I right?
I was asking, yes, about the core components of establishing the team.
The core components is talent, to be honest, and having the right environment in place to allow talent to shine and to move. We have a great team in place. I have the pleasure of working with them on a day-to-day basis. The key aspect is that them coming up with ideas and receiving the right facilitation and space to be able to do what they want to do, what they inspire are inspired to do. So that to me is the key component. And then working with the rest of the company, working with the rest of the organization to understand the needs, and then to be able to deliver through the systems that you already have in place in the company.
Thank you, Dr. Ammar. I think that's a very well-structured answer. And you mentioned the company desire towards innovation, and basically there is a general movement in Oman and other countries towards innovation and more, creative ideas that can solve corporates' challenges or whatsoever, even in the government sector. But maybe an easily understood, easily applied definition of innovation is something that is difficult to articulate. So from your perspective, your own personal perspective, how do you describe innovation, and how do you, I don't know if you have a different definition of innovation in OQ, for example, and how you try to apply that definition and the elements around it within SablaX.
Okay. To me, innovation is if I boil it down to its basics, is problem solving, but it's problem solving for the future. So you are not necessarily addressing a need that is existing today. You might be addressing a need that would become apparent to others in a few years' time. And you need the same elements as you would need for addressing a pressing need of today. Bringing the right people around it, bringing the right expertise and resources to make sure that this problem is solved. And the entire thing to me starts with identifying the need, whether that is now or that is a future is immaterial. The same methodology is going to be applied. Innovations come small and large, in my opinion. The small ones would be simple tweaks to something that you're currently doing as a person, as a company, as a country. The large ones are the ones that really change our lives. Something like Google, for example, when it started a few years ago, what was life-changing in terms of what we have available to us today compared to what we had 10 or 15 years ago. The disruptive ones are the ones that are going to have a major impact on our lives. And whether it's small or large, in my opinion, there is an iterative nature to innovation. You're going to try it. The rate of success is probably going to be low. So if you're a banker, you probably would not be interested in investing in innovation, but you definitely will be interested in the next big thing. When Uber comes out, you better have stocks in it. Success rate is going to be low. The number of tries you will need to take, stabs you need to have at a particular problem might be multiples until you get to the right solution. And then there are always tweaks and improvements as you go along the way. I hope that I provided something that's understandable in terms of how I see innovation. Having it in place is more difficult. To me, it's a marathon that you need to go through as an organization. It's not about we want to be innovative and tomorrow suddenly we're innovative. It's actually a culture that needs to be built over a long period of time that has multiple elements to it. Your leadership has to be in place and aligned with the vision of where the company wants to move and the vision of innovation. You need to have the right people in place. You need to have the right systems. You need to have the right resources. And you need to talk the talk and walk the talk through and through. And you need to be consistent at it for a few years at least until you start seeing the results of it in how everyone in the organization exercise and practice their lives day in and day out. To me, that's probably it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Dr. Ammar. I understand that OQ has a daring vision of developing and competing globally and contributing to Oman's GDP. capturing the quick wins and many other aspirations. How did OQ envision a role for innovation towards achieving these aspirations?
There is currently no concrete numbers that are attached to innovation in OQ, but there certainly is a vision. When OQ became an entity and the whole integration project started, it was built around quick wins. It was built around us already being a global company because we're operating in 13 countries around the world. The joining of 9 entities in Oman into one. All of this led to a vision of capturing those low-lying fruits, the quick ones you mentioned, Al-Ghais, and making sure that these would enable us to move into the future. The savings, the funds that are made available through the quick wins are the ones that are helping us in moving into the future. Part of the future is innovation. So this is an investment that OQ is making into the future of the company and henceforth into the future of Oman. Utilizing resources, utilizing funds today to make sure that 10 years, 15, 30 years down the line, we as a company are still here operating, working in this market and providing payback to our key stakeholder, to the Omani people and to the Omani government. So that's the vision that the company has for innovation. And as I said, it's only 1 year old. So as in terms of innovation, this is still a very young baby. So there is still some way to go, and some more crystallization that needs to take place before we have a clear vision of what this is going to be playing in the future of the company. One thing that is clear today is that as a company, we want to move into the future, we want to survive, and innovation is going to be a key aspect of what we're going to be doing in the future.
I wanted to ask another question, but you actually meant, really you answered the question, which is the vision of innovation within OQ in the next couple of years. So I'll just move to the next one. Dr. Ammar, you mentioned innovation culture and the importance of innovation culture, and basically that's one of the things that SablaX focuses on. Probably one of the most things that you focus on at this stage. And so the question is, how would a regular employee understand and relate to innovation within the working culture or within the working environment in OQ and in any other corporate as well? And what is the role of the leadership and the higher ranked staff that they play in crafting these innovation cultures?
To the regular employee, innovation probably would boil down to challenging the status quo and thinking of how can I do this in a better way, how can I do it differently. It also boils down to questioning traditions or practices. Traditions are great as long as they serve what we want to do as an organization and they have a goal in mind. But then it's very important to always be thinking outside the box. Is this something that we should be doing? Should we make changes to the way we're doing it? That's in the end what it will boil down to once you have the innovation culture in place. It's about people being creative enough and being brave enough to come forward and say that I think there is a better way of doing this, or I think that we need to investigate this for the future. As I said, it's not always about solving a current matter. It might be about addressing a future perceived need. So that's what we would expect in terms of behaviors, in terms of attitudes of a regular employee once an innovation culture is embedded into an organization. Leadership needs to draw that vision, needs to draw that picture, and needs to drive the organization towards that goal, and needs to have the stamina to see it through, to keep pushing until as an organization we get there. So it's very important that they buy into it in the first place, and then to talk the talk and walk the talk at the same time. So two balances or two balancing acts. One of them is required now. I mean, in the early stages and needs to be consistent throughout, which is what leadership does. And the employees, the message is going to get across. It will take a little while, but at the end of the day, it's going to get across. And it's going to get across through multiple channels. It's not going to be simple talking, but then actions that have to be taken by the organization so that people believe that, yes, we are an organization that wants to innovate. We are an organization that is moving into the future.
Yes, yes. And Dr. Ammar, we agree that innovation requires change, and change doesn't happen easily, especially when it involves many people that are maybe used to some sort of environment and culture. But it definitely also needs amending the authority system and how the decision-making process happens. Innovation maybe requires maybe fast actions taken to implement it and implement the culture. So empowering people within a company would mean maybe an increase in the efficiency and practicing innovation. How do you imagine that? How do you look at this, and how do you what do you think about it?
Luckily, I don't have to imagine it. I'm actually seeing it in practice, Al-Ghais. Part of the change process that OQ is going through is touching upon this particular aspect, which is authority. And there is a project that is actually running at this point in time. Just to give you a quick update, OQ is going through a structuring process at this point in time. We structure a unit and then we staff the unit. And once the unit is staffed, the authority team basically gets into place and start having these discussions of the delegation of authority. And the operative word in here is delegation. So the authority is being pushed down into the organization as far as possible, simply to drive the process of efficiency and quick decision-making processes in the organization. The drive is agility, but this helps us in innovation as well. As you said, because it means that we do not need to escalate matters to receive decisions. Particular people will have particular authorities and they can simply exercise them. Matter is decided upon, move forward, as simple as that. So we're happening as innovation at the right time in terms of coming in with all of these things that are also happening within OQ. So push authority as far as possible within the organization, lower into the organization to make sure that you're driving this quick decision-making process.
Yeah. Again, I think, yes, it's very critical to maybe all of our organizations in Oman to target and follow the same approach maybe that you guys in OQ are trying to follow, which is reducing the gap between the authority making and the regular staff. And probably you agree with me when I say that the more responsibility that you give to your staff, the more innovative they will become. One last question from my side, Dr. Ammar, and then we'll open up to the audience to direct questions to you. How big of a role does innovation play in the Omani economy at the moment? And how big of a role will it play in the coming future as well?
Currently, as a nation, I think we just started in terms of innovation. We're making our first steps. So how big a role innovation plays in Oman's economy, I would say it's quite small. How big a role will it play in the future? I can only judge by the speech of His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq. The one he gave had a few key points in relation to research and development, education, innovation, to be specific. So I see a much bigger role for innovation to play in the Omani economy in years to come, inshallah ta'ala. We're making our first steps, as I said, and this is an effort that will require all parties to be hands-on the government sector, the private sector, academia, the innovators or the creative people that we have in this great nation. But then I'm pretty sure that it's going to happen in the future. We just need to be here to see the fruits of it.
Thank you, Dr. Ammar. Definitely very useful insights. And now I will direct some questions to you that came from our audience. So first question is it open for the public to participate in SablaX?
Currently, SablaX is in its inception phase. The system we will operate on is what we refer to as open innovation. So yes, it will be open to the public to contribute ideas and to work with us. We're just starting, but we're already working with units or with entities outside OQ. So this is not an OQ closed thing. Most companies have understood that they cannot do it on their own and that they need to link up with talents outside their organization to make sure that they can do this and they can survive, or else they will not be able to have all resources in places. So the simple answer is yes.
Okay. There's a question also saying, what advice would you give the Omani youth in terms of being in leadership positions?
Okay, that's a loaded one. I would say, again, as much experience and exposure as possible. Do not be afraid to try new things. Embrace failure. I think that's a very important one. And understand that failure is part of your success. Thomas Edison, they say that he tried 99 times to make that bulb. And then the 100th trial was the one that was successful. As a leader, you also need to do that. But you also need to read. I think as a nation, one of our drawbacks is that we're not a nation of readers, unfortunately. We used to be a nation of readers. Today, we need to do so much reading because through that, we'll be able to learn from others, to learn their mistakes and also to learn their ways of doing things, and then to contextualize those and adjust them to fit what we need as people, what we need as a country.
Question from Mohammed Hanai. He says, when it comes to structural rigidity of companies in the oil and gas field, how did leadership approach issues? How did leadership approach issues with it? How does your team deal with it as well? And to what extent do you think you have done, and how to what extent did you succeed in that?
Okay, let me read this because this is loaded, Muhammad. When it comes to structural rigidity, okay. How did leadership approach issues with structural rigidity? Is that what the question is? Well, assuming that that's what Muhammad means, how did leadership approach issues in terms of structural rigidity? I'm not an organizational design expert in here, so do not quote me on this matter, but I'm going to say it anyways. I'm going to stick my neck out. I think a key aspect of avoiding this structural rigidity is to make sure that your structure is built around processes and functions that the organization needs to be doing. And watching out for the pitfall of falling into kingdoms or people, building their silos and operating within those silos. It takes an effort to break it down and to make sure that teams are working cross-disciplinary to make sure that the organization is moving forward. How does my team works with this? We're a small team of 7 people at this point in time. And what we do is we use technology to our side, thanks to the young people on the team who came forward and suggested, let's try this and let's try that, quote unquote, Habib. We function on the basis that everything is transparent within the team. So there is no one specific person working on a particular matter in the team that the others do not know about. He or she would be responsible for example, delivering a business case. But then going through the drafts of the business case, everybody else sees the drafts and can comment on the drafts and see what sort of comments are made to the draft. And this is not only to improve the outcome, but also to train and to provide competencies and capacities to the team members. So that's how we deal with that. And we're not big enough to have structure or rigidity in place. How we deal with it within the organization is you think of the innovation hub or any team within any function or within any organization as a service provider, if I may say, and the other units within the company or the organization as clients. You need to understand what they need as clients, what their expectations. You need to treat them as if you're dealing with an external client and making sure that you're making that extra step to understand expectations, to engage, to meet expectations, and to communicate on a very regular basis. And to what extent do you think you have been successful? We just started, Muhammad. I think we're doing a good job at it, but then there is a lot for us to learn. I can promise you that we're going to make mistakes. And I hope, and I can also promise you that we're going to be learning from those mistakes and improve as we go.
Thank you, Dr. Ammar. We have 3 questions from Lamia Harab. So she asks, which customers are OQ focusing on in terms of innovation? Should we take them one by one, Doctor?
Lamia, I got them, okay. Currently, we're focusing, Lamia is an internal, an OQ colleague, by the way. Currently, we're focusing on our needs in OQ. So solving business challenges that we have in the company. In the next 5 years or so, we're probably going to be focusing on improving processes and products in the downstream. That's the bulk of the business. But we're an integrated energy company, so we go through the spectrum of hydrocarbons and energy from the point of generation or exploration to the point of providing it to the end customer. So I would not see it as being far-fetched that we move into alternative energies and renewables as focus of innovation in the future. But currently, the current focus is on addressing needs within the company. We're in a proof of concept phase, by the way, as an overall hub, so that we solidify that understanding and then we understand how it should function within OQ, then move forward.
Lamia's second question is, how did you create a culture in OQ that develops ideas and enable innovation?
The simple answer to this question is that we are just at the beginning of this. I wouldn't say that we have this culture in place. The integration itself is only a year or so old, and innovation is only a year or so old as well. And as I said, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint race. So there is a long way to go. But the key aspect of this is going to employees, working with them, running events for, to gather these ideas and making sure that once these ideas are put forward and proposed, is that you engage the idea owner in terms of this is where your idea is going. If it needs improvement, this is the kind of feedback that we have for you. Please come back to us with further improvements. Or if it's moving forward, you keep them abreast of the changes that this is the stage we're at, and we anticipate that the next stage is going to be this and that. So people feel appreciated and will have the courage and the motivation to come forward with their second idea. I mean, the first one might be a leap of faith, but then if you lose them after the first one, they're never coming back. So we have to make sure that they're engaged in the process so that they will come back with the second and third, so on and so forth.
Yes. The third question is, what are the disruptive innovations that you think would assist the energy sector move towards the fourth industrial revolution?
I think that those disruptive forces are already in place. Earlier in mid 2019, Google and Amazon started talking about getting into the energy industry. To me, that is disruptive enough, because these guys come and they have a lot of knowledge and a lot of oomph in terms of investment and capabilities. They're going to disrupt the place they will get into. SpaceX got into the space arena and changed the way we're launching satellites into orbits. We have reusable rockets. Who thought that we'd have reusable rockets 10 years ago? And you know, when these disruptors come into the arena, they certainly are going to drive fourth industrial revolution. I already see it happening in terms of artificial intelligence and big data. I don't think there is any self-respecting energy company in the world today that will not be, you will not hear these two concepts in the corridors. OQ is not excluded. We already are thinking about artificial intelligence and big data and how can we utilize these to help us move forward as a company. And this is only the spearhead of the fourth industrial revolution coming into the energy sector. I would only see more of it coming through. I hope that addresses Lamia's question.
She wanted you to talk about Bashir, so I don't know. I'm not sure what is that exactly. But
Tabashir for us, Omanis are the first fruits of dates, the ones that we get very early in the season. In our culture, we look forward to these first fruits because pretty much we've been waiting for the palm trees to give fruit for almost a year. So we look at these with a lot of happiness and joy. Tabashir within OQ is the platform that our employees can use to propose ideas, to report challenges and seek help for those, or to nominate subject matter experts. That's the key things that Tabashir do, and a key element of it is the subject matter expertise, and that's one key thing that we're trying to capitalize on in the company, is the people that we have great talents, and we need to make sure that we're making use of those talents. Thank you, Lamia, for the questions.
Another familiar person to you, Dr. Ammar, Hamid Dar'i, is asking, how is OQ's innovation effort aligned with the Sultan's innovation vision?
Hamid, hello. How are you doing? Looking forward to seeing you soon, inshallah. How do we align with the Sultan's innovation? 2040, Vision 2040 just approached OQ asking for a similar question, by the way. How does this align with what the country wants to do? First of all, OQ is 100% owned Omani government company. So whatever we do, the benefit goes back to the nation. The focus of the company is on sustainability, on business excellence, and these will not fall very far from the tree of 2040 vision for Oman. So driving sustainability in an energy company through innovation and through other measures is what we are about. So focus in our efforts in innovation towards driving the business end of the company and improving it into the future is basically what would align with the 2040 vision.
A question also, Dr. Ammar, how can the organization bridge the gap between old and new generation in innovation adaptation? Old generations sometimes resist to embrace new optics.
Okay, so Muhammad is talking about the generation gap. Not all old people are dinosaurs, by the way, to start with. My answer would be that you need to select the right people for the right place. Innovation by its nature is probably going to be driven by young people. Because you're right, Muhammad, we do expect them to be more open to exploring things. But at the same time, you need to temper the talents and the youth with experience to have that, most effective combination. Right leadership in place, open-minded, is definitely going to drive this process. In all walks of life, there are people that are open to change, that will embrace change, the early adapters, and then you will have a bigger bulk of the population, any population, that is going to be waiting and then on the sidelines, and they see that, oh, this looks interesting, and a few people have tried it, so let me join the party. And then you're always going to have the resistors. And innovation is no different. You're going to have those ones that want to try the crazy ideas, and then the majority of organizations or people that are going to follow and in very short pursuit, and then some that are going to be resisting change. You either convince them, or the other way is the train leaves the station. Then they can be left and waiting at the station. Life doesn't stop for any one of us. That train keeps moving. So you either jump on it, or it's going to go and leave you behind. So that's how I see it.
There's a question from Shayma Al-Ghairani. She asks, what lessons you learned from COVID-19 pandemic?
I think I'm gonna repeat the cliche that we could work from home. That technology can really enable us to work more effectively. But one key element, Shayma, that we learned from COVID-19, I personally experienced it, is that we can deliver fast. There are a few Omani small and medium enterprises that came forward to develop medical equipment and medical devices to help the country in this, in this special circumstance. So in Oman, our manufacturing capacity would have probably been quite small in this area, in the medical area. But over the period of just a few weeks, we started seeing shields, protective equipment being manufactured in Oman, simply because people saw the need. And as a nation, we could not go and buy. As simple as that. If you had loads of money and wanted to buy, or still want to buy a ventilator today, you're probably going to have a hard time getting it. Prices went up, quantities went down, so you more or less have to fend for yourself. And being able to see that energy channeled into a particular direction enabled us to see quick delivery. So what I learned, Shayma, is that we can. If we decide that we want to do, we certainly can.
Yes, and I think Shayma is taking part in this process as she is working with the Innovation Factory and these stuff at the moment.
That's where a question is coming from then.
Question, Dr. Ammar is saying, how exactly is SablaX planning to support innovation outside OQ?
We're going to be selfish in terms of innovation. It has to serve OQ in the first place. That's the beauty of it, that it has to be focused. Now, how are we going to support innovation and innovators? By having an open innovation system. It's not a closed ecosystem. So we will not be doing this on our own. We're going to be doing it with others. So that's a contribution that we're going to be providing. The contribution would be coming probably in terms of funding for ideas that we see of benefit to the company. Contribution could be coming in form of training and passing of know-how to innovators that we see would be of benefit to the organization at the end of the day. Any company that goes into research and development in Oman and innovation is definitely going to be adding to the academic sector by developing capabilities, by adding capabilities, equipment, capacities in the sector. And all of this at the end of the day is going to pay back to the country. Now we need to approach it in a very focused manner to make sure that there is an end goal in mind. And that's the beauty of having focus. Once you have that end goal in mind, you'd be able to drive efforts towards that. I hope that satisfies the question.
Thank you, Doctor. Yes. There's a question from an anonymous saying, what should entrepreneurs of Oman expect from SablaX in the upcoming month? This is a similar question, maybe.
Al-Ghayth, the line cut off a little bit. What? Oh, I get the question. What should the entrepreneurs of Oman expect from SablaX in the upcoming months? Entrepreneurs per se might not be innovators. If they are, and if the ideas they're having are going to be of service to the company, then they should be expecting support from us, provided that there is a clear goal in mind, in why we as a company would be going into that. Subject matter, small and medium-sized enterprises are going to be benefit because we're going to be tapping into capacities in the country to fabricate or manufacture particular things. But at this point in time, the focus of the company is going to be on innovations that are of relevance to the business of OQ. We're not in here. Let me be very frank. We're not getting into this for the sake of the PR of it. We're not getting into it for the sake of doing any charity work. This is serving a business need for the company. So that's what's driving us from day one.
I can see similar questions that you already answered, Dr. Ammar, so I'll just move to the next ones. There's a question of how is SablaX different from continuous improvement initiatives? And how do you manage ideas? Do you send it back to the process owner? How diverse your team members are?
Okay. Continuous improvement is something that every organization needs to be looking at and working on day in and day out. But continuous improvement is more or less about improving processes that you already have in place. Innovation is about maybe taking all that process and throwing it out and bringing something totally new. So the disruption element of it, the significant change to what you currently do is what distinguishes continuous improvement from innovation. And that's how SablaX is different from continuous improvement. I believe Mariam is probably closely aligned or maybe an employee of OQ, because that question is quite specific. How we manage ideas is we populate them into a database and we monitor them. So even ideas that we park and think that cannot move forward at this point in time, we keep data on, because it's very important to be able to go back to them and see maybe this is applicable now. And do we send them back to the process owner? Absolutely. The process owner is part and parcel of the idea, because they are the end customer. So they have to buy into it and they have to provide their input into the matter. The idea owner is also engaged in the process in moving it forward, because they understand what they're proposing to us. We work with them to develop the business case, and we work with the process owner, with the end customer, to validate the case, to raise any concerns that they would have, and then we move it forward. How diverse is the team? We have a corrosion engineer in place. We have a material science graduate in place. We have a biomolecular chemical engineer in place. I have a construction engineering background. We have a PhD in chemistry in place. And we have a project manager / turbine expert in place. And we have one that studies public policy, politics, and law. So it's a quite a diverse team. And that's the beauty of it. That's what drives it. That having these multiple points of view, looking at one particular thing. I believe you know a few of them, Al-Ghais.
Yes. Next question is from Tariq Al-Jaini. Even though that it's hard to predict, how do you think we can use technology to be more prepared for the future crisis?
How can we use technology to be more prepared for future crisis? Tariq, I think that we need to own that technology, know how to use it fairly well. And B, we need to have it in place to help us accelerate the pace of change for any future crisis that we're going to face. And that if there is anything that we're going to face, is we're going to face challenges in the future. So we need to be prepared for them. What I've seen is companies Omanis, talented ones, left, right, and center, coming up with ideas and pushing these ideas into application. I think you've all heard of Lemma, a platform that is soon to be launched or has already been launched for conducting meetings like the one we're currently having. There are a few that started into the 3D printing arena. There are a few that are moving into the advanced manufacturing arena. And all of these are technologies that are going to help us in a nation moving forward into the future, or God forbids if we face another crisis.
A question from Fatma Dahwan. It would be great to see how such engagement between challenges within OQ and startups innovation can come together. Will there be an open opportunity for such?
There will be an open opportunity for this. As I said, we're going to be operating on an open innovation ecosystem. We're starting this within the company to make sure that the process is solid, the model is solid, and we can deliver. And once we have the right elements in place, we'll start venturing out. We already started venturing out in terms of working on the medical equipment, the ventilators. The bulk of the work is done by Omani SMEs. So that's one element of it. We're soon moving into a few innovations with academia. So that's another element. And this is nothing new, by the way. OQ, in the 9 companies that became OQ, already had relationships with academia. So they were already doing work to serve their business ends, to identify and resolve issues through parties outside the company. So this merely is going to build on that and make sure that we're doing more of it, and we're doing it in a well-structured manner.
Right, we'll take, I think, the last question. A question from Ammar Rawahi. Does OQ have collaboration with universities and colleges in Oman in terms of implementing R&D approaches? And do these universities, are these universities welcoming to the idea?
Okay. I believe Ammar is an ex-student of mine. The second part, I think I've already answered, which is to which extent that OQ engages with startups in terms of executing projects. I'll address the first one. Yes, we do have relationships as a company with universities and colleges. We have existing and past relationships in terms of companies that became OQ. And we're going to continue that. I can promise you that. Do these universities welcome the needs from the companies? Yes. I know that BDO works extensively with research and development, and OQ does the same. OQ works extensively with the academic institutions in Oman to conduct the research and development. Being an academic in a previous life of mine, yes, we sometimes tend to be difficult to deal with. We only see the science side of it and do not get around to understand the industrial requirement. But from my interactions, I would say that academia is embracing this. And this is a journey that we will need to take together as industry and academia. We need to walk it and develop this capacity and develop this, how do I say, acceptance of that there is something more important than the basic sciences and the paper that I want to publish at the end of the project. Work in progress, I would say, Ammar, but the signs are promising.
Right. The questions are continuously coming, and I think time is not helping us to address all of them. But we'll be sharing with you this recorded webinar, and you can go back to it. I'd like to thank Dr. Ammar for this enriching conversation. I'm sure that many of us are very happy to hear that our companies in Oman are directing their efforts towards more innovation cultures, and we hope that this will continue to build a greater economy for Oman. I also thank you, our members and attendees today. It has been a pleasure to have you with us, and inshallah we'll see you again next month. with a new topic and a new speaker. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Al-Ghayth. I look forward to being in the audience for the next one, inshallah. And thanks for everybody being here today.
Thank you very much.